I'm more interested in why Elon Musk tweeted when he bought Twitter and was asked, will you bring back Alex Jones? He said no.
I think it is far more dangerous for society to engage in a culture of censorship, of viewpoint discrimination, than it is to allow people to speak freely, barring the committing of violent crime. Incorrect.
This isn't what he said.
That's incorrect. You still have an answer. You still have an answer. That doesn't prove that he knowingly lied anything. Are you out of your tree, sir?
I'm challenged.
It's a cesspool.
Steven Crowder is dropping knowledge. Welcome back to One and Done. Today we're going to have a look at this interview between Piers Morgan and Steven Crowder. It's very interesting to get Piers Morgan's perspective on freedom of speech and Steven Crowder, who clearly has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to freedom of speech and the First Amendment. And how important is that First Amendment? Well, Elon Musk thinks it's super important because he's let Alex Jones back on X, formerly known as Twitter. And I guess these two are going to rumble over whether that's a good idea or a bad idea. So without further ado, without delay, let's jump in and roll the tape.
Welcome back to Uncensored. Last week I criticised Elon Musk's decision to allow the massacre-denying conspiracy theorist Alex Jones to return to X, formerly Twitter. Some people weren't happy. They included the influential conservative personality Steven Crowder. This is what he had to say on his show, Louder with Crowder, about me.
This brings us to Piers Morgan's rules for me. He hosted Alex Jones on his very own program this year. Piers Morgan doesn't understand what freedom of speech is. Piers Morgan has also hosted Suhail Shaheen, the Taliban spokesperson. Jeez. Wahid Asif Shaita, an Islamist extremist leader. Jeremy Corbyn, the anti-Semitic Labour Party leader. Just Piers, stop it. I'm sorry. Fraud. There we go.
Well, in the spirit of hosting very controversial people on my free speech platform, I'm now joined by Steven Crowder, who can call me a free speech hypocrite to my face. Mr. Crowder, good day to you. How are you?
Well, thank you, Piers. Merry Christmas. And let me say off the bat, I do actually appreciate about you. Your audience may not know how rare this is, that you do these interviews live, you don't chop them up, you actually have a discussion, and I've been advocating for that my whole life. So really, I appreciate it. Those are steps in the right direction.
Let's start with your assessment that I'm a free speech hypocrite. So articulate to me why you believe that.
Now, I'll be very clear in my definition of free speech. It's the constitutional definition of freedom of speech. All speech is permissible outside of a crime, and we have very clear parameters, and these have been affirmed by the Supreme Court, as to what that is. That's a proactive call for violence. The crime is not the speech. The crime is the action causing violence on purpose. Outside of that, everything is permissible. But for a show uncensored, and I know that you've said there's a difference between across the pond there, and obviously in the United States, we have a First Amendment that you don't. How would you define freedom of speech?
Well, I don't think we're as far apart as you think.
And this is one of the beauties of the United States of America, is that First Amendment right to free speech. And it's something that they should try and protect at all costs. There's no other country that has it written in its constitution the way that the US has. And in America, I think they'd fight for that constitutional right, and I think so they should. And to Steven Crowder's point earlier, I think Piers Morgan is a hypocrite when it comes to free speech. You know, like Steven said, he had Alex Jones on there earlier, Taliban leaders, etc., Hamas. So he likes freedom of speech when it suits him.
You talk about the First Amendment not protecting, for example, crime. It's a little bit more complicated. For example, it doesn't protect you if you deliberately defame somebody. And my argument about Alex Jones in particular was that he's just been punished with over $1 billion fine in one of the biggest defamation cases in modern American history for deliberately telling lies about the families of the poor victims of the Sandy Hook massacre over a sustained period of time, which led to them getting direct harassment and other criminal activity. So I was joining all the dots there of his particular situation, and I concurred with Elon Musk's original view when he was asked about it when he first bought Twitter last year, which was he was not going to allow him back on. He's now changed his mind, but my opinion was based on the Constitution of the United States not protecting you if you are guilty of defamation.
Well, okay, so I'm going to have to take the rounds out of that magazine from how loaded that question was and so much misinformation there. And that's the beauty of the freedom of speech. You can say that, you can speak misinformation, and you have the right to, for example, saying he knowingly lied. Look, I'm not in the business of defending everything that Alex Jones has said, okay? But if you're going to say the 22 minutes out of 8,000 hours of broadcast time for which he apologized, acknowledged that he was wrong, constitutes what you are saying is proactively lying, that is a very dangerous precedent to set, and it's not accurate.
Hang on, Stephen.
It's not accurate.
Stephen, he did deliberately lie for a sustained period of time, for years, about these families. He knew Sandy Hook.
Tell me how he deliberately lied.
He knew that.
Tell me how he deliberately
lied. And he was found to have deliberately lied.
Tell me how he deliberately lied.
And by the way, in his defense, he tried
Tell me how he deliberately lied, please.
In his defense, he tried to play the First Amendment card, and it was rejected by the judge. Rejected.
Tell me how he deliberately lied, please.
Because he knew that it wasn't a hoax. He knew the massacre had happened.
Incorrect.
Let's listen to what he said.
That's incorrect.
Let's play what he said.
Hook, it's got inside job written all over it. Sandy Hook is a synthetic, completely fake, with actors, in my view, manufactured. I couldn't believe it at first. People just instinctively know that there's a lot of fraud going on. But it took me about a year with Sandy Hook to come to grips with the fact that the whole thing was fake.
Whole thing was fake. Repeatedly. That's a series of different shows he did.
You still haven't answered. You still haven't answered. That doesn't prove that he knowingly lied anything. Look, Alex Jones is wrong about a lie.
You're a very smart.
Alex Jones is wrong about a lie.
Stephen, you and I disagree.
But he's also afraid.
Stephen, you and I disagree. Hang on.
Believed it, and
I'm going to respond to you. You and I disagree about many things. We agree about many too, right? But on this point, you're a very smart guy. I wouldn't question that for a moment. You and I both know Alex Jones knew that was not faked, Sandy Hook. You and I both know that.
So I have to spit the words out that you just tried to place in my mouth. I do not know that. I don't agree with the premise. And you have yet to prove it. Here's the beauty, though.
I don't have to prove it.
Even if you were to commit defamation, even if... No, it didn't. And even assuming that you don't discuss the caps with your audience, and I'm going to continue speaking as though we're having a dialogue, even assuming that you don't discuss the caps, that he would never pay out, the far lower settlement that they have decided they would allow, considering this will go to a superior court and will get thrown out, even if you allow all of those things, here's the beauty of the First Amendment. Here's the beauty of the First Amendment. Even if you at one point commit defamation, you still don't forfeit your right to speak going forward. You don't lose a fundamental human right.
I agree.
And that's not why he was banned from. That's not why he was banned from Twitter.
I know that.
Pierce, that's already checkmate. He was successfully sued for defamation, but he doesn't lose his freedom of speech, his First Amendment right. So I think they're two different things. Now, Pierce is arguing that Alex Jones has pushed this for, I guess, years. The fact that he believes Sandy Hook didn't happen. So he's admitted to his mistake, but the hypocrisy is that he's upset because Elon Musk has put Alex Jones back on the X platform. But Pierce, you interviewed Alex Jones as well, so you platformed him as well. Now, I think everyone's entitled to make mistakes. I've made a ton of mistakes. What people find difficult, though, when they make mistakes is come back, own those mistakes, admit those mistakes, apologize for those mistakes, make amends, and keep it moving. But this is developing into a really interesting conversation. And Steven Crowder, he is fantastic when it comes to debating. I love the show that he does where he goes to the campuses and speaks to the students. I think it's called Change My Mind, which in itself, again, reinforces how important freedom of speech is. He goes on campuses and he challenges these people's ideas. And as normal lefties do, they get triggered as hell.
But I agree with the first version of Elon Musk's decision-making, not the second one based on a completely undemocratic poll he put on his own Twitter feed.
Well, I agree with you that it shouldn't be left to a democratic poll because the First Amendment is not subject to a vote.
Right. But you accept the First Amendment of the US Constitution has a number of things which are excluded from protection, whether it's child pornography, fraud, defamation. There's a whole list of things which you'll simply...
But that has nothing to do with speech.
No, but you're conflating...
Pierce.
But I think you've mischaracterized what I said then, because I've never said he hasn't got a right to say what he wants. He can say what he likes. I believe fundamentally in anyone's right to say whatever they want. The question is accountability. And the US Constitution, which you don't think I know anything about, but actually I know a lot about. And I'm a huge...
I didn't say you don't know anything about it. I really don't believe that. I know that you have studied it.
In another clip from that same show you did, you basically said, I don't know much about the US Constitution because I'm not American. And that's fine. But I have lived and worked in America for 20 years. I have tried to really get a handle on the US Constitution. And on the issue of the First Amendment, It is a complicated thing. It's not as simple as saying you can say
It's not
whatever you
complicated.
want. Well, it is, because it doesn't allow the unfettered free speech, but with protection. You're suggesting it does.
It absolutely does.
It's really not that complicated. There are a couple of things like you can't, scream fire in a movie theater or something like that. But just the fact that you don't like what someone's saying, that needs to be protected. And I'd much rather see those people and hear those people and know who they are and where they are. Obviously, you can choose to avoid them or you can choose to engage. That's the beauty of free speech.
It absolutely does, barring, would you like me to explain? Barring what I've already outlined. Actual criminal behavior calling for violence against other people. For example, Pierce, look,
but
you know that you have
defamation.
been, and I'm saying this in your defense. For example, you made your joke about being a two-spirited penguin, right? I thought it was cute. I think it was funny. And I understand the point that you were trying to make, okay? You have had people accuse you of creating violence against trans. You know that, and we know it's absurd. So who defines what is actually calling for violence, or if you
but here's
basically
the
in a roundabout way maybe causing violence? No, unless you called for violence.
No, but you keep saying
that you were a two-spirited
penguin.
penguin.
You keep saying that your only barrier on free speech is crime.
Yes.
And I keep reminding you that Alex Jones was found guilty of defamation, and that is one of the things that's not protected by the First Amendment.
No. It's not protected in a you can have civil damages, and your First Amendment rights don't cease to exist. In other words, you can pay. You can pay the piper for what you have done in that individual instance. So if someone at some point, if someone accuses you of defamation, and let's say has a suit levied against you that actually, by God, is successful. Let's say that, does that forbid you from speaking publicly thereafter?
No,
you don't lose it. It's a fundamental human right.
Not at all. But it does allow, I'm exercising my rights to free speech to say I think he shouldn't be allowed back on X, which was the position of the owner of X until last week. So my point is that Elon Musk has made two judgment calls about this. One I agreed with and one I didn't. And I'm exercising my free speech rights to say I don't agree with it.
You are. And I completely support your right to that. The problem is Elon Musk changed his mind in the face of new information. And if we want to have productive dialogues, we need to, you know what? This is one thing I often ask. And by the way, I think that none of this is a gotcha for Twitter clicks. I hope to God it's not. How often when you were on CNN, or how often when you were on your morning show there in the UK, or how often do you see on any news network someone say, you know what? New information came out and I was wrong. And I say that because you've done it and I appreciate it. You said, you know what? If I knew what I know now about the COVID vaccine, specifically that if you get the COVID vaccine, you cannot transmit it. If I knew that was incorrect, I wouldn't have espoused the views that I did. I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think the problem that we have in today's society is not wanting to allow people to be wrong, to make mistakes. In the realm of comedy, look, good jokes and bad jokes come from the same place. Sometimes you have to risk something and it's not funny.
I agree
Sometimes
with you about all that.
You have to express an opinion.
Yeah, but I agree with you about all that.
Sure.
Look, Steven Crowder has broken this down perfectly. And he's used some fantastic examples. You can make mistakes. You can even commit a crime. You can be done for defamation. But you do not lose the right to freedom of speech. And people need to have the ability to make mistakes. It doesn't make them a bad person. They haven't fundamentally changed. There's bad mistakes in all of us. And I love the analogy about, good jokes and bad jokes come from the same place. And society, or in the instance of a comedian, the audience will be the judge. And if you tell a bad joke, the audience will soon let you know. And if you tell a good joke, they'll also let you know, and you will use that going forward, right? So the marketplace of ideas will accept and promote great ideas. And that's how I think we shape, the best way to shape society, on merit, not on feelings. Because feelings change all the time.
I don't think that people like Alex Jones should be allowed an unchallenged, unfettered public platform to spew lies which are done deliberately, in my estimation, to spew lies.
Unchallenged?
Are
you out of your tree, sir?
He's unchallenged.
It's a cesspool.
No.
Anyone can say anything they
People
like.
can reply to him, but no one can have a direct challenge to Alex Jones, like I did when he came on my show.
Of course they can.
Look, like you picked out, for example, that he came on my show, Jeremy Corbyn, Taliban spokesman, and so on. Yes, because in each of those cases, I put them through the mincer, right? And I'm prepared to have them on to give them a hard time and challenge them. You might agree or disagree with that, but they're all pretty volatile interviews. But I was able to challenge what I perceived to be
volatile interviews because he's mainly speaking over them and they're speaking over him. That a lot of the times he's not really getting to the substance. Piers Morgan, he's still a mainstream media commentator. He's better than most of the mainstream commentators, I must admit, but he's operating with one hand but tied behind his back. And it does come out in his interviews. Even with this interview, how many times has he repeated that Alex Jones has been sued for defamation? How many times do you have to say that? We already know that. So instead of focusing on, okay, so how did this all unfold? How did this happen that Elon Musk decided to, change? How was his mind changed? It's almost like he's still fishing for that gotcha moment, which is typical of the mainstream media. Now, like I said, I think Piers Morgan, out of the mainstream media, he's probably a little better than most, but he's not going to win this argument on freedom of speech against Stephen Crowder.
Their untruths, right? I'll show you a clip of the Corbyn one to show you what I mean. Have a look at this.
You seem to be
Hang on,
over-concerned with
anti-Semitism.
No, I did not.
I am. Should Hamas stay in power? It's actually
you done yet?
It's actually a critical question.
Are you done yet?
It's a critical question.
Are you done yet?
No, it's the question.
Are you done yet?
Should they stay in power?
Are you done yet?
This country says they're a terror group. Do you agree? And should they stay in power?
Listen, I do not approve, support, or welcome Hamas.
Are you prepared to call Hamas a terror group?
Is it possible to have a rational discussion with you? Is it possible? Come on, answer that question.
You can't, can you?
You answer it.
No, it's my show. You answer my question. Now, the point of playing that clip, other than to entertain you, as I'm sure it did, is that, yes...
I hate that clip. I hate everything about that clip.
Why do you hate it?
I hate it because I don't like Jeremy Corbyn, but I think he's a bombastic prick, but I also think that you should have let him finish speaking. Why? Because then he would express bad ideas. Yeah, that's why I support freedom of speech.
But actually, in the end, I could tell very quickly he was never going to give an answer. And therefore, we were in a game of cat and mouse, which went on so long that the viewer was left in no uncertain terms what his answer actually was.
No, Piers, you were trying to fish for a gotcha moment. Stephen Crowder's right. Let him tell you who he is, what he's about. You'll see for yourself. The audience should be intelligent enough to see and hear for himself. A lot of times when you let people talk, they actually trip themselves up.
Because otherwise you just say Hamas are a terror group. It's not difficult. And in fact, 2 days later, he admitted Hamas are a terror group. That was his position. But only after I shamed him into doing it. So look, here's my question for you.
So that's it. So you want to shame people into agreeing with you.
No,
I would rather just let them speak if they have bad ideas.
Not at all.
Yeah.
I want to shame them into giving an honest opinion. What I will really lose my rag about, and I'm sure...
But wait on, how's that an honest opinion if you've shamed him into saying something? Obviously, he's changed his opinion because of peer pressure, because of societal pressures on him. And this is a problem. This is a problem if you force people into saying things. Let them tell you what they think. Let them tell you what they feel. That way we can unmask and uncover what they really feel.
Well, you must be the same. When people just obfuscate and don't give a straight answer to a straight, simple question, then I will go after them. If they give an honest answer, even if I don't agree with it, I respect that. And in fact, I think people who watch my show regularly will see that is my position, whether I agree with them or not. I have lots of people on that I don't really agree with.
Yeah, but you've also got to allow for nuanced answers, because a lot of questions, they expect you to answer a yes or no to a complex question. And Piers does this a lot. These complex questions, they actually need the nuanced answers.
Let me ask you a straight question.
Sure.
David Duke, the former KKK leader, he's banned from Twitter. Elon Musk hasn't brought him back. Right. Should he be allowed to be back on X?
Throw that at me. Really? You just say, I want to ask someone a straight question. You have me here. I'm basically a specter. I don't appear on anyone. You want to ask me about David Duke?
Yes. Because he's banned from Twitter.
Should David Duke be allowed back on X?
Yes.
I'm not as familiar with David Duke as I am with Alex, which is why I was able to point out that you cannot prove that he knowingly lied about anything. No. If David Duke has called for the violence, look, if David Duke has called for the violence, actions of violence against minority groups, then no. If David Duke has espoused horrible points of view that can be refuted, by the way, not only by other people who are on X, but by the community notes on X, and on a platform where people are free to speak on both sides of the aisle, then yes. It doesn't mean that I think he's anything other than a racist prick.
Oh man, Stephen Crowder, he has dropped the mic at least 3 or 4 occasions in this interview. He really is exposing Pierce's mindset. It's simple. Unless you're calling for violence, let him speak. Let other people respond to him. Let other people tear his arguments down or his perspectives or his opinions. If he's calling for violence, simple, deplatform him. But if he just has some horrible opinions and even if he is racist, I'd rather see the racists in front of my eyes than coming out of the dark from somewhere. This is what is supposed to separate the West from the rest, is that we have open marketplace for ideas and freedom of speech. But more and more often, those freedoms are getting taken away and presented to us as if we need protection from speech. Speech is speech. Unless you're inciting violence, let them speak.
So I'm trying to work out whether you...
Can I make one point?
Yeah.
Can I make one point that I think is very... This is really, and hopefully we can agree on this, because I actually disagree with you that Elon Musk can do whatever he wants with his own platform. It comes down to this. I think, and if you look at the historical record, I think it is far more dangerous for society to engage in a culture of censorship, of viewpoint discrimination, than it is to allow people to speak freely, barring the committing of violent crimes. I think that we see a far worse dystopia in our future if we allow the government and these big tech platforms to determine who can speak and who cannot. And we've seen some very clear examples of this. If you give me 30 seconds, let me lay this out for you. For example, I don't think they have the right to, for example, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Here's why. They benefit from Section 230. Now, I know you have a lot of fans in the UK. They may not be familiar with this. Let me explain what it means. They're basically treated like public utilities, meaning that they have immunity from liability for someone saying something on their platform. For example, AT&T here in the States can't ban you from their phone service because your racist Aunt Tilly drops an N-bomb after a few drinks at Thanksgiving. They're a public utility. These big tech platforms are treated as platforms where they are not legally liable for what is permitted, but that allows them to engage in viewpoint discrimination. And then there is no accountability. For example, the Hunter Biden laptop story, which we know, and this is why I make all references publicly available, because I want to be held to account, and I will be held to account, would have changed the election if the government was not, and when I say colluding, I mean Joe Biden, Jen Psaki, Kamala Harris, Karen Jean-Pierre, calling for the removal of Joe Rogan from Spotify, calling for the removal of vaccine scientists, by the way, of mRNA vaccine scientists from public platforms. If all information was allowed to be transmitted freely, like the platforms, as they are treated under our legal precedent here and Section 230, guess what? Donald Trump would be president. I'm saying this as a matter of record and fact. Millions of people would not have gotten the mRNA vaccine, specifically men under 30, and lockdowns would have lasted days, weeks, not years. That is irrefutable, but you had the government and these platforms deciding which views were allowed and which views weren't. And I don't think I should be allowed, you should be allowed, and certainly not the government colluding with 5 companies who control over 90% of the information in the digital sphere. It is terrifying to me. You may think I'm an absolutist. I think I'm reasonable.
No, I don't. I actually don't think that's unreasonable at all. In fact, I have written numerous columns about the outrage of the New York Post having that initial expose of Hunter Biden's laptop censored by Twitter, as it was then.
So Steven Crowder's just dropped some bombs of knowledge that I didn't even know about. That companies like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram are protected by Section 230, which means that they can't get sued for speech if someone drops the N-bomb or anything like that. So they really don't need to censor as much as they do. And then secondly, he's breaking it down that when the government gets involved, this is the worst thing that can happen because they can influence things like elections by shutting down freedom of speech, not letting information out. Or when it comes to the vaccines and things like that, instead of being locked down for weeks, we were locked down for years because governments were shutting down speech from scientists and other people that had opposing views of, say, vaccines and things like that. Crowder's just dropping mad knowledge, and I think Pierce is getting an education. He's getting a 101. Hopefully he'll change his mind when it comes to freedom of speech after this, because Steven Crowder, I said before, he's dropped the mic 3 or 4 times. He's just absolutely smashed the mic on the floor. I mean, this is jaw-dropping stuff, the stuff he's spitting out right now.
You know, I've said to Donald Trump to his face, never mind the stolen election bullshit you keep trying to pretend happened. I said, focus on that, because that probably swung the election. because it stopped the media investigating properly what was going on with Hunter Biden in Ukraine and what his father's involvement would be. I think that could have swung the election. So I absolutely agree with you.
Let me give you a funny story about it. And not only could it, it would have, according to Dr. Epstein. Do you realize? Now, I'm a comedian, right? This show, that's why I appreciate you said, hey, you got a chuckle from our segment. Some of it is tongue in cheek. And I appreciate that you recognize that and not try and use, you acknowledge that it's a joke, whether it's funny or not. So as a comedian, the host of a comedy show, Rudy Giuliani was on this show. And the first time the public ever saw Hunter Biden's laptop was on this show. He brought it up. He goes, I have the laptop here. The FBI came, they searched my offices. They took everything but the laptop. I go, wait. Is that the Hunter Biden laptop? He said, yes. Episode is banned. Suspended from YouTube.
Whoa.
Think about that. Think of how terrifying that is. It was an accident.
It's wrong. It's wrong. Let me ask you though, yesterday on your show, you appeared wearing a t-shirt saying Alex Jones was right, changed my mind. So my question is, what was he right about?
Oh gosh, how much time do you have?
So again, did you notice there, Piers Morgan said, yeah, that was wrong. And he glosses over it real quick. And then he goes back to Alex Jones. I mean, what sort of impact has Alex Jones had when it comes to the Sandy Hook fiasco compared to the government and shutting down freedom of speech? How can you compare the both? And he's not really interested in talking about that. This is why these people on mainstream media, they're so disingenuous. That's why it's difficult to trust them. Anyway, let's carry on.
Well, are you talking about Sandy Hook?
No, I'm not talking about Sandy Hook. He said he was wrong about Sandy Hook.
Right.
He apologized for Sandy Hook.
When he was sued, he said he was
Eventually, but I'm saying obviously the shirt wouldn't be addressing that. If it's he says I was wrong, it would be awfully daft to
But
wear a shirt saying he was
what are you
right about
alluding
something.
to then?
I'm alluding to, for crying out loud, if you talk about intelligence agencies spying on Americans, if you talk about what we've done with South American countries as allowing the spread of STDs, for which Hillary Clinton apologized for, if you talk about nation building where there have been underhanded deals with nations who don't have our best interests at heart, I mean, it's, take your pick. I don't believe that, for example, George W. Bush was next to the Twin Towers with an Acme plunger. No, I'm not that kind of a conspiracy theorist. But when Alex Jones said, look, you are going to be corralled into social media ghettos and lose your right to speak, he was right. He's right about a lot. And I will say this, he's been wrong about plenty. I am not here to defend everything that Alex Jones has ever said. I'm willing to defend everything that I have said on my program. But that man is exactly who you would expect him to be. He's a friend of mine. And when everyone else tucked tail and they ran, I'm not going to do that. I'll tell him he's wrong. I'll tell you where I think he's wrong. But that man has a right to speak. Just like I believe you have the right to speak. And Pierce, if you think they're not going to come for you, oh my word, do you have another thing coming? And I hope that
it's only a matter of time.
I genuinely hope that you don't. Well, I mean, I've had people say that I was a hate speaker because I said soccer was gay. I do. I think so.
You think soccer's gay?
Homosexual, yes.
You know what? That's a whole other debate, Stephen Crowder. Let's have a debate about whether soccer is gay. And if it is, by the way, I would be happy to embrace its homosexual side.
I know you would. I know you would. But with that accent, you have to be careful. People take you seriously. I think it's great. I think it's great if you're a 6-year-old girl or a homosexual from Greece, to quote Nick DiPaolo.
Yeah, you know the difference in our football and your football? We don't wear helmets to protect ourselves. We're real men over here.
You also don't allow contact.
We're real men over here. It's there's no great padding or great shoulder pads and helmets. We just get stuck into each other. And that's the difference. Americans
and Academy Awards.
You like to wear helmets and carry guns. We just use these guns. But that's a whole other debate as well. Stephen Crowder, got to leave it there. It's been a good debate.
Please.
I've actually enjoyed the tone of this debate. I think it's a really interesting area, free speech.
You got smoked.
I think ultimately we agree about more things with free speech than we disagree. But let's keep the debate going. Thank you for joining me.
Merry Christmas, Pierce. I appreciate it.
Now, folks, Piers Morgan got absolutely smoked by Stephen Crowder. He was way out of his depths there. Stephen Crowder was just spitting facts and a wealth of knowledge, and he really broke things down very basically for people like myself to understand. Now, the great thing about watching that is that knowledge was dropped. I learned a few things that I didn't know, like the Section 230 protections that social media platforms have, and they don't necessarily need to censor speech the way that they've been censoring it because they are protected by law, which means they can't be sued for defamation, I believe. Freedom of speech is so important, and the First Amendment is so important and needs to be protected. Now, why would you want to shut down a voice like Stephen Crowder? Because of the Hunter Biden laptop? That's crazy. That's ludicrous. I'm sure plenty of people got educated, especially people in the UK, in regards to the subject matter. Now, as far as Alex Jones is concerned, fantastic. Let him on X. He's been right about plenty of things, and he's, like Steven Crowder said, he's got a lot of things wrong. But also Steven Crowder listed off plenty of people, including politicians, that have got things wrong that have cost lives. But they don't get deplatformed, they get propped up. And that's a problem. Now, I'd love to hear what you have to say. How did Pierce do? How did Steven Crowder do? Don't forget to leave a like, share, subscribe, and ring the notification bell, and I will catch you in the next video.